Okay, it's Dana Abercrombie at the Coalition. It is a pleasure to speak to you, Craig. You are the master of ceremonies with this, the director. We have to talk about this is 30 years that we've seen the original. So I was wondering, as a director, what was the importance that you wanted to, we had the foundation already.
Right.
What was it that you wanted to build upon in order to create this new sequel?
I mean, I think that, obviously there's the comedy element. We we
Mhm.
we, we want to entertain people more than anything else. But I think that it was what was more important to us was to kind of ring the dinner bell for the reunion. Like we
Mhm.
just wanted everybody to feel like, well, everybody is still here in Zamunda. You
Right.
know, the friends that we had in the original movie, they're all here. But we also wanted to be a little bit more contemporary, a little bit more fresh with it. So that sometimes meant Ruth Carter changing the costumes to something perhaps a little bit more, African centric,
Mhm.
um, to updating the palaces. But more than anything, we really wanted everybody to enjoy checking in with these characters that they fell in love with more than 30 years ago, and see what they're doing now. And I just felt that the story was a perfect way to explore that kind of reunion.
Right. Now, like the original, we had them coming to America. Now it's more like coming to Zamunda. We get to spend more time in Zamunda and learn about the culture and how that looked. And through that, you have beautiful scenes that just capture the pure beauty and the culture of of the country. So I was wanting to know, what was the important parts of Zamunda that you wanted to bring forth onto the screen?
Well, I think that also, in addition to just the aesthetic of it, like it was
Mhm.
also a true callback to the original, because I try to remind people like what it was like to be back in 1989 watching Coming to America. You know, there really had not been like a comedy with a predominantly African American cast, especially that had that kind of production value that was in that movie. I mean, the sets and the costumes and everything that was in Coming to America when you were in Zamunda was
Mhm.
kind of stunning back in the day. I mean, that whole gorgeous Paula Abdul choreographed dance number when they were bringing forth Imani, to
Mhm.
meet Akeem. It's a high bar,
Right.
and so I was telling all the production designers, like, we've got to keep raising that bar. We can't fall below that. And so some of the sets, some of the costumes would incorporate, like I always bring up, my favorite costume thing is this. In the original movie, James Earl Jones wore essentially a lion's head and
Mhm.
skin on himself.
Right.
Back in the day, you were like, that is the most awesome thing I've ever seen. But we can't really do that, in 2019 when we were making it. And so I told Ruth, like, well, why don't we design like a cool, like, golden Africa, a golden lion
Right.
head that would connect to a cape, something that like Jay-Z would wear to like an event with Beyonce or something like that. And so you would take the original elements of the movie and try to just
Right.
reincorporate them into a modern look.
Right. And what I love also is that it expands upon the story. You have the original characters and then you build on it with these new characters. Can you talk a little bit about what was and the storyline we all know is that, there's a son that might be out there. What was the important elements that you really wanted to show with these kind of new cast members and their story coming to Zamunda?
Well, I think two things that were kind of important to me with that concept. One, and first and foremost, was to show that this disruptive force of like a son that Akeem did not know about, and his mother,
Hmm.
who is not been raised in royalty, does not have does not is not necessarily saying things that are polite at times, but she's sincere and she's got love in her heart. She doesn't think there needs to be a problem, and there was something about that disruptive force in their royal pomp that I think they needed. I think
Right.
the family needed that to kind of shake them out of the bubble of the fairy tale they've been living in and bring them into the real world. But also, there's a moment in the movie, and it's funny. I remember having this realization when I was in prep on the movie. I realized that Akeem's son, played by Jermaine Fowler, had never seen Coming to America. I know that sounds silly, but like, not the actor, the character.
Right.
We as an audience saw Coming to America, but the character does not know about Akeem's youth 30
Right.
years ago. And so I was like, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to have like Mirembe, the barber, explain the first movie as if it was like a fairy tale that she was told when she was a little girl.
Hmm.
The legend of Akeem in the land of queens. And the way she tells the story, it sounds like a knight going off to a foreign land and battling,
Right.
creatures. But we're seeing the movie kind of reinterpreted in a way that is a fairy tale, which is something that Eddie Murphy would always say to us every day. Like, just remember that first movie is at its heart a fairy tale, and we need to have this be a different type of fairy tale.
Right. So I was wondering, as you was directing this, what would you say was kind of your greatest lesson that you learned while putting everything together?
I think that to be patient, and to always provide a set where everybody feels comfortable. That's like the most important thing that I can bring to any project that I do. I love working with actors. I love working with designers, and usually when there's a question, the first thing out of my mouth is like, "Well, what do you think?" And that's sometimes a scary thing to ask an actor. Well, what do you think? I know that you think that they're incredibly opinionated. They are, but they need to feel safe to have their opinions. So I would say that, but also just being patient, because so many times when you're dealing with comedy, you've got numerous jokes or so many different takes that you could use, but eventually just working the cut, showing it to people, hearing what works, hear what doesn't, and not feeling like, oh, I've ruined the scene, but having the patience to know that it's eventually going to like come into place and fall into place, and it's going to work out. That's probably the two biggest lessons.
Right. There's so many beautiful cameos in here that I was watching. I was like, oh my gosh, how did you get this person and that person? So I was wondering, how did you get some of these people? Was it a hard effort? Was it easy? And did you kind of have it in mind that you wanted to see?
Absolutely. We always had in mind some of the people that we wanted to have the cameos with, but you know what you do? You call them up and say, we're making Coming to America, and we'd like you to be in it. And then they say, where do you want me? When do you want me? Because everybody wanted to be a part of this. There were so many times that I've had to, like, unfortunately, tell people they couldn't be in it. Friends of mine, movie stars that have been in other things. So they're like, can I be in Coming to America? It's like, there's really not a place for you here. And also, to keep in mind that our cameos and some of the references that we have, like, sometimes they're old school, and that was important to me. I wanted to make sure that we represented my audience base, which is like people in their 40s. I saw Coming to America when I was in high school, and I want to have like a movie that still nods to give some nods of respect to artists that were in my world. I mean, yes, I'm happy that we got Bobby Sessions and Megan Thee Stallion on our soundtrack, but I'm now really happy with the cameos that we have, because it gives a nod to my generation.
Right. So also I was wondering, through this whole production and everything, was there a particular scene that you was really happy to re-explore?
Well, I mean, there's some scenes that I would say are like, when you talk about re-explore, it's like kind of like going back to the barbershop is just at the top of the list. Like, to walk into a set that is inch by inch the exact same barbershop from the original movie, and then dealing with the guys as the barbershop workers, the Clarence and Morris and Sweets. That was an absolute joy. But really, the joy of doing a movie like Coming to America is like, well, what's the scene that I probably would like to see with the original characters that maybe I didn't see in the movie? And to be honest with you, my favorite scene actually is a really sweet and tender scene between Cleo McDowell and Akeem in the movie. It's not especially funny, but it's poignant, because it's two fathers talking to each other. And that's what makes this movie, I think, special unto itself. We want this movie to really be a celebration of the first movie.
Right.
But also it's 30 years later, and there's a whole new theme that we can explore, which is like, I was in high school when I saw the first movie, but now I've got kids that are in high school. And the same thing is happening to Akeem. Same thing's happening to Eddie Murphy. I mean, I don't know if he had his 10 children when he was making the first movie, but he's got them now. We're different.
Right.
And it's a much more pleasing story, I think, to go into, knowing that a lot has changed, and maybe Akeem is struggling with some of the ideals that he had in the first movie.
Right. Now you're dealing with a lot of comedians in this movie. And I was wondering, as a director, I mean, there's a lot of ad-libs. I'm going to assume that's flying around. When do you know when to say cut? Because, they can just keep going and going.
It's very hard to say cut, especially with all these cast members. I'm telling you, every day. I mean, there were times that like I'd have to tell my crew, like, look, we've got Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, and Tracy Morgan all going to be on the same day today. You guys got to allow 10 minutes before we start working of just them talking about movies. I remember there was a riff where Tracy Morgan and Eddie Murphy were doing a full version of Planet of the Apes in front of me. They were doing the original Planet of the Apes. For whatever reason, those two guys know every line of that movie, and they started quoting it like it was a whole performance of that movie before we began going. And I was like, Craig, we really gotta get these scenes done before lunch. I'm like, how can I stop this? how can I move forward when I've got this kind of entertainment?
Oh, that's incredible. So hopefully we'll get the DVD of all these extra scenes.
Right.
That's hilarious. So I was wondering, if you could sum this movie up using just 3 words, what would you say?
Family, funny, and then a hyphen word, sexual chocolate.
You gotta have sexual chocolate. That right there. I'm excited already. That's just incredible. Thank you so much for the sexual chocolate part. That was hilarious. So,
No
Leslie, I was wondering, when it comes to this movie, what would you say? I know you have a lot of really great moments, but was there a moment that you was just amazed that it came together?
Yeah, there's this one moment that Oha is about to sing a song, and I want everybody to think like, oh, he's going to sing "She's Your Queen," but I had Princess Get Off in my mind, and I really wanted him to do that. And I thought, like, if we could have like a dance number in here in this music moment that can be a nod to the Paul Abdul moment in the first movie. It can also add some humor to like Oha singing "She's Your Queen" to the first one, but flip it, and do something different. And I was very pleased with how that whole thing came off.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking with me. It's been a pleasure. I love the movie.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Take care.